Good afternoon. It's Sunday, the 26th of July. I'm Erin Viner, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. Police clashed with rock-throwing Palestinians on the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in the Old City of the capital as thousands of Jewish worshippers marked Tisha B'Av at the Temple Mount's western wall. We get more in this report from IBA's Aryeh O'Sullivan.
The mournful sound of the Book of Lamentations, written by the prophet Jeremiah at the time when the first temple was destroyed by the Babylonians on Tisha B'Av, or the 9th day of the month of Av on the Jewish calendar. It marks a day when catastrophe and tragedy have repeatedly struck the Jewish people. The Romans later destroyed the second temple on the same day, 655 years later. But early this morning, police scuffled with masked Arab youths who collected stones and other items to hurl on Jewish worshippers from the Al-Aqsa Plaza above the Western Wall.
This morning at approximately 8 o'clock, masked Palestinians started throwing stones, rocks and boulders at our police officers who were located at the Mugrabim gate outside of the Temple Mount area. Immediately our police units responded by entering inside the area, dispersed the rioters, pushed them back inside the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Our police officers did not enter inside the Al-Aqsa Mosque. As a result of the stones and the disturbances, 4 police officers were injured lightly, but we took calm of the situation within a few minutes, and the regular visits on Temple Mount continued.
It's been a rough morning here at the Western Wall in Jerusalem on Tisha B'Av. Earlier today, police had to go up on the Temple Mount to quell rioters. But the Romans and the Babylonians are long gone, and Jews come here to the Western Wall to remember the destruction of the temple and hope for a third temple in the future. Police this year allowed Jews to visit the Temple Mount, some of whom ascended barefoot. About 800 took advantage of this, including Agriculture Minister Uri Ariel from the Bayit Yehudi party.
From one side, it's very, you feel the Shekhinah, you feel the holiness, you feel you're back at home, okay? But on the other side, there are all the Arabs there, but yelling and crying, and they don't let a Jew make a prayer because they know that all the prayers get received there.
It's amazing. I think it's very humbling, and it's great to see so many people coming together and being equals and paying their respects.
And as always on Tisha B'Av, the fringe is out seeking to erect a temple again on the Mount.
Oh yeah, I've seen the plans. I've seen all the instruments ready for it. I'm a Cohen, so all we need is a big Cohen and not a Mashiach.
But they say in the Midrash that the temple will come down from the heavens.
That's Rashi. Rashi said that.
What do you think?
I think we can build it ourselves.
What about that Dome of the Rock up there?
We'll disassemble it and send it all to Mecca. It's all Muslim property. They can have it. I don't want it there.
Some say the temples were destroyed by internecine fighting among the Jews.
When the chips are down, Am Yisrael is together. But we have to work on it when things are going a little bit better, and we have to remember that we're all Am Echad.
We must to be equal by thinking, equal by even in mind, equal to understand that there is different person in front of you.
From the Western Wall, this is Ariel Sullivan for IBA News.
Riots also erupted in the ancient biblical city of Hebron at the start of Tisha B'Av last night. Palestinians repeatedly disrupted Jewish prayers at the Cave of the Patriarchs after calls from the muezzin for Muslim worshippers to come pray at the site, even though it wasn't their designated time. Tensions came to a boil when several Jewish youths barricaded one of the muezzin inside of his room and prevented him from leaving. Border police arriving at the scene used tear gas to disperse the crowd, and several of the Jewish rioters were taken into custody for questioning. Government officials have confirmed that convicted spy Jonathan Pollard is set to leave federal U.S. prison later this year, but they are denying reports that his release is linked to the recently signed nuclear deal with Iran. The White House, National Security Council, and the Justice Department have also released statements strongly rejecting any connection. The former naval intelligence analyst has spent 30 years behind bars for spying on behalf of Israel and is due to come before a parole commission in 4 months, and his projected release date is November 21st. Officials in Jerusalem say that a routine hearing on the matter was held 3 weeks ago without any involvement or interference by American or Israeli governmental officials. Zionist Union Knesset member Dr. Nachman Shai is the chairman of the Knesset Lobby for Pollard's release and joins me now in the studio. Thank you very much for coming in this afternoon.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Now, it was the Wall Street Journal that first published reports citing American officials that linked Pollard's release possibly to the Iranian nuclear deal. Was this simply speculation?
It's maybe a speculation, but it's a ridiculous one. There's no reason whatsoever to link the two of them. Pollard is due to be released at the end of this year after 30 years, and just now to use him or to abuse him in this context looked very ugly, and I wish it wasn't even come up this way.
Now, in practical terms, when Pollard does come up before the Parole Commission, is it required of him that he express remorse for his actions, and might this be problematic?
I don't know what was discussed in that committee. I know that the process is that few months before his release, he's invited to this committee, and they interview him, and they don't publish their decision, but then we know few months later. There is a certain process of how do you say, getting him back into his own community. Mm-hmm. It's preparing him for rehabilitation. I'm not sure this is the case. But he did see the committee already, and now we are waiting for the decision. But again, as I said before, there is no reason whatsoever to bring him now to the context of Israel-US relations. It's totally irrelevant.
What, if anything, should the government or you and the committee be doing right now? Is there anything you should be doing?
The caucus has been very active in the course of the years. It's bipartisan. Last time we signed a petition of over 100 Knesset members, actually 106 of them from all the political spectrum. They all sided with his release from humanitarian reasons. We didn't get into the question of spying. We just said it's time to send him home. We sent the letter to the president. Have you heard from him? Because we didn't hear from him. And that's not the only time. The American administration was very quiet about that. But in two cases, once many years ago around the White Plantation Agreement, and recently a year ago when there was exchange of prisoners and Israel was supposed to release a number of Israeli Arabs from jail, then the Americans came and said, well, maybe we'll release Pollard at this time as well. And the answer from the Israeli side was no. It was no then, and it is no now.
And I believe Jonathan Pollard himself has always refused to be part of any kind of a prisoner exchange.
And recently he didn't want to see anyone, including Israeli official representatives. He just want to serve the whole term and go home. And I absolutely believe that there's no reason whatsoever to keep him in jail one single moment beyond the 30 years.
Are there any foreseeable obstacles that you see that could possibly prevent his release?
Always. Because as we all know, in the past, there were always voices from the intelligence community in the United States that rejected the idea. And by the way, some of those officials that were absolutely against at the time are now absolutely for his release. So you never know what's going on there. But I think that opposition is over as well. And I don't see any top secret, American top secret, that our friend Jonathan still holds, that he should stay in jail until he opens his mouth and say something. He disclosed everything he knew. I don't think there is any secret here, and he should just go home, and this chapter should be closed.
We're just about out of time, but before I let you go, I'd like to ask you about something a little closer to home. You've always been a regular guest on our program and a defender of us in the Knesset. And so, at this point, we know very little about the future of the Israel Broadcast Authority. What are you hearing?
I think the government, I'm in the opposition, so I tell you what my opinion is. My opinion is that they want you to be dependent on them for mainly budget, but other reasons too. They don't want independent Israeli broadcasting or public broadcasting service. This is the case. And the current situation is ideal. You are not longer the old Israeli Broadcast Authority. You are not yet in the new form. And you are now hanged between the two of them, totally dependent on the government. You just have to listen to the Prime Minister, the government ministers, and others. And that's a really betrayal in your mission. Your mission is to be independent journalist, an independent journalistic organization. And I'm doubtful whether this is the case right now.
Dr. Nachman Shai, Chaver Knesset, thank you very much for coming and sharing your insight with us. Thank you.
I'll do my best.
In other news, Hezbollah leader Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah used a televised Beirut address to his followers to make his first public statements about the nuclear accord with Iran. The Lebanese Shiite leader vowed that Iran's agreement with the world powers will in no way affect its support of his organization. Nasrallah went on to express his certainty that Iran's financial sponsorship of Hezbollah allows it to confront Israel as well as U.S. policies here in the region. Nasrallah boasted that sanctions that Washington recently imposed on 3 Hezbollah military commanders that were involved in pro-Assad activity in Syria's civil war will have no impact. Referring to the United States' continued classification of Hezbollah as a terror group, Nasrallah proclaimed that the U.S. remains the great Satan regardless of the deal that it signed with Iran. The international community considers the Islamic Republic to be the world's greatest state sponsor of terrorism. The nuclear agreement with Iran will, in fact, allow Tehran to boost its commitment to its terrorist allies across the Middle East. That's the view of Dr. Jonathan Spire of the Gloria Center, who has just returned from Iraq and shared his impressions with IBA's R.A. O'Sullivan.
Yeah, it is a sectarian war. We should include the Kurdish Peshmerga in the north as well, of course, so it's basically three-sided. But other than that, absolutely. I mean, the Islamic State is governing or is controlling the greater part of Sunni majority central Iraq. And the capital of Baghdad is effectively defended today by the forces of what's called the Hashd al-Sha'bi, or popular mobilization, which effectively is a coming together of the Shia militias who came together after a fatwa issued by Ayatollah Ali al-Sistani in June 2014 when ISIS was heading towards Baghdad. The Iraqi security forces, as I say, the official state army, is in a state of complete decay and near collapse, riddled with corruption from top to bottom, and basically incapable of effectively acting as an element of security. So the armed element preventing Daesh from marching on Baghdad today is the Iranian-backed, Iranian-financed, Iranian-equipped Shia militias.
So it looks like in the big picture, America was wrong. They created this army, they got out, when Obama pulled the troops out, they created an Iraqi army. And now, who's really running the show is Iran.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think you can put all the blame on Obama either, by the way. I mean, frankly, as far as I can see it, the reality is as follows. If you go in 2003 to destroy the Saddam Hussein regime, and you decide not to put in a new dictator, and you have elections in Iraq, given the demographic makeup of Iraq, it is a near inevitability that you will end up with a Shia ascendancy in Iraq. And given the current balance of power in the region, it is likely that any Shia ascendancy will find its way towards alliance with Iran. So I think that's just the reality of the situation, yes.
So looking at the deal that the 5+1 made with Iran, and Iran's sort of overt existence in Iraq,
yeah.
Do you think this is going to change the picture in some way?
Yeah, I think it will. I mean, this has been said a lot, and I think it's absolutely correct that in a certain sense, the most immediately important part of this deal is that if sanctions are lifted, or begin to be lifted in the months ahead, and the oft-quoted figure of $150 billion in frozen revenue comes back online for the Iranians, that will significantly boost their already existing regional commitments, of which Iraq is one. They're also committed to supporting Ansar Allah, the Houthis in Yemen. They're also, of course, committed to the survival of Bashar Assad's regime in Syria. They're supporting Hezbollah also in Lebanon. And, of course, they're supporting Islamic Jihad and maybe also Hamas, or increasingly again, Hamas among the Palestinians here. So they've got a large portfolio of regional commitments. Under sanctions, things were getting a little bit tight. That's to say, there was a limited amount of money and a lot of commitments. But right now, $150 billion apparently is due to come back online. That's going to make things much easier again to send plenty of money to all sorts of friends in need across the region.
What's it like in Baghdad? Are you fearful?
Well, we organised it well, so there's no need to be fearful. But yeah, it's a strange city. It's not really functioning normally as a city. I mean, you have to be very careful with regard to entering certain areas. There's a general sense that there isn't really a functioning police force. The Shia militias are pretty much free to do what they want. It's important to remember that the Interior Ministry, which controls the federal police in Iraq, is also in the hands of the militias, because the Bada organization, one of the militias, is also a political party, and one of its representatives, a man called Mohammed Rabban, is currently the interior minister in Iraq. So, it's a strange setup, and you have that sense. You should remember also that ISIS has begun, or Daesh has begun also to carry out bomb attacks inside the city. There's been a couple of hotels frequented by foreigners been targeted by car bombs in the last couple of months. So there's a certain amount of tension in the city as well. So put all that together, yeah, it's not a normal environment by any means.
In other regional news, violence continues to rage between the Turkish army and Kurdish militants. 2 Turkish soldiers were killed and 4 injured when a car bomb exploded in the southeastern province of Diyarbakir overnight. The blast targeted a police patrol in the town of Lija as it was heading to break up a group of Kurdish protesters who were blocking a road. Meanwhile, the Turkish Air Force continues to pound PKK encampments of the Kurdish Workers' Party in the Kandil Mountain region of Iraq, as well as Islamic State positions, as part of the plan to create a safe zone across sections of the country and northern Syria. Prompted by last week's ISIS suicide bombing inside of Turkey near the Syrian border that killed 32 people, Ankara announced its change in policy this weekend to ramp up its role in the U.S.-led coalition against Islamic State, which has seized much of Syria's north and east. Opposition lawmakers have alleged that the government is using the campaign against the radical Sunni terrorists as an excuse to crack down on the Kurds, while many in the Kurdish community are accusing Ankara of quietly supporting the Islamic State. U.S. Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton has officially declared her support for the nuclear agreement with Iran. While speaking during a campaign rally in Iowa, Clinton said that she does not trust Tehran and considers inspections to be the key.
I support the president's agreement with Iran. I helped to negotiate the original sanctions that got us on that pathway. And the key to it will be enforcement. I don't trust the Iranians. Nobody should trust the Iranians. That's not, we're not expecting some kind of transformation on their part. This is a hard-headed agreement to put a lid on their nuclear weapons program. And then we still have to pay attention to their export of terrorism, their support of terrorists around the region and beyond, their destabilizing of governments, their threat to Israel, their threat to, the West, etc. We do have to pay attention to that, and we will when I'm president. But it'll be a lot better paying attention to that if we've got this lid on the nuclear weapons program, and that's why this agreement is so critical.
Here at home, and 2 days after the devastating forest fire near Beit Shemesh, authorities have reassessed the damage, describing it as the worst blaze since the 2010 Mount Carmel disaster. The flames ignited Friday afternoon, scorching nearly 2,000 dunams of natural greenery. More than 70 firefighting crews and over a dozen planes were used to extinguish the fire, which was successfully extinguished toward nightfall on Friday. An investigation reveals that the blaze was sparked by negligence on the part of a local farmer, but was further aggravated by hot winds and the dry weather conditions. Throughout the weekend, there were nearly a dozen other brush fires across the country that were apparently sparked by the heat wave. Returning now to Tisha B'Av, and City of David tour guide Shachar Shiloh has this underground account of the unsuccessful battle to save Jerusalem from Roman conquest.
Jerusalem of Tisha B'Av is a complex city that is made of the glorious times previous to the destruction and then the testimonials of destruction, which are so unique to Jerusalem that one can still see the ashes underground. I invite you right now to join me in an amazing experience underground to understand the complexity of the destruction in the Roman times of Jerusalem right here in the Pool of Siloam and the tunnels under Siloam. Let us go on an experience underground Jerusalem to see the testimonials of the great revolt against the Romans. On this pavement, these stairs once saw millions of pilgrims walking and climbing up from the Pool of Siloam all the way to the Temple Mount. Those stairs specifically have been witnessing the great revolt against the Romans. We will continue to see what's underneath them. This is the famous pilgrimage road that underneath it lies the famous tunnels of Siloam as described in the book of Josephus. In these specific places, one can still witness the breakthrough that the Romans did as described by Josephus. We can still see the places where they broke that pavement and took out and pulled the Jews, which were the last Jewish refugees of the great revolt against the Romans. Well, our tour of Tisha B'Av almost comes to its end. These tunnels once witnessed the flock of people running away from their homes right here in the western part of the city. They came underground here and actually lived here in between Tisha B'Av, the date of destruction of the temple, all the way to Chet Be'elul, 1 month underground, literally escaping from the Romans. And when we read Josephus, the war of the Jews against the Romans, then we come to the amazing understanding of what was the end of these last refugees. If you join me right here to the Western Wall, we can sum it up. At the foot of the Western Wall, our tour comes to an end. This time capsule is like a silent witness to the times that are no more. The last refugees coming out from these tunnels actually resided here at the foot of the temple and at the foot of the Western Wall. This is where our tour comes to an end, and we will go out to see where the Western Wall still stands today as a testimonial of the times that are no longer with us.
The Tel Aviv Stock Exchange was closed today due to the Tisha B'Av holiday. And there's really not that much to tell you about the weather report either, because tomorrow is expected to be pretty much the same as today with no significant change in temperatures. Here's the forecast at home and abroad over the next 24 hours. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. We hope you'll join us again tomorrow when Laura Cornfield will be here to bring you the latest breaking news from Israel. I'm Erin Viner, wishing you a good evening and shalom from Jerusalem.